Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, thank you for finding us. I hope you're doing well. If you could subscribe and give us a comment and a like and all that fun stuff and everything that YouTubers always say, it would be hugely appreciated because it really does help the channel. Let's get right into the video. What are we here to talk about today? It is none other than Come Drink With Me. Yeah, so this is a movie I have previously actually avoided reviewing on the channel because I didn't feel like at the time I was up to the challenge. And I will talk about why that is in just a second. This is the Arrow release. This came out in March of 2022. This film is from 1966. It stars Cheng Pei-Pei and it stars Yue Hua and a bunch of others. And it was written and directed by King Hu. So, Come Drink With Me is really kind of like one of the most important films in the history of Hong Kong cinema, in the history of martial arts cinema, in the history of action cinema, etc., etc., etc. And that's actually one of the reasons, because as you may know, there is an 88 films release on Blu-ray for Region B. This is a Region A release from Arrow, and this is the Region B release from 88 Films. And I got that 88 Films release when it came out, and I'm a very big fan of King Hu. I absolutely love Dragon Inn. That's one of my favorite old school martial arts films, and I love Come Drink With Me, Touches Zen. Like, he's such a great filmmaker. And when Come Drink With Me came out from 88 Films, I kind of just felt like, given the importance of that film in the history of martial arts cinema, I didn't feel like I was ready for the challenge of reviewing it at the time. I didn't think I was there kind of mentally and in my kind of appreciation and knowledge of the history of these films. And I feel like I've kind of gotten to a point a little bit with the Arrow release that is now out that I can talk about this film and not feel like totally like an idiot and like I don't know what I'm talking about. So if you're just here to see footage comparison between these two releases, because I know people are interested in that, I'm going to put that at the end of the video. I'm just going to put a clip from each one at the end of the video, so you skip to the end if that's all you want to see. If you just want to know whether or not you should buy this, yes, unequivocally, this is a 5-star release, 10 out of 10, A+, whatever you want to rate it. Like, this is among the elite tier of Hong Kong films on Blu-ray. There's a couple reasons for that. One, as I said, this is just an absolutely must-have, important, all-time classic film. Now, not everyone will like this film, depending on your own personal taste, and I will talk about that in a second. But it's you know, you can't overestimate the importance of this film. And so if you're someone who is a completist or a huge fan of these films or a big-time collector, it's a must-have film anyway. But this edition is ridiculous. There's hours worth of interviews on here. There's an incredible commentary track, a fantastic booklet. It's really incredible. There's like an hour-long documentary. Like, there's incredible stuff on here that will help you so much to understand where this film stands in history, to contextualize the making of the film, to understand the careers of the people who are in it. It's just a phenomenal and absolutely incredible release, and I highly recommend it. So, to talk about the film and to talk about the bonus features on here, I will talk about the film first, and then I will talk about the release. So, the film is really kind of, and this is actually quoted as having been written in a book about Hong Kong cinema in one of the essays in here, but this is something that, you know, I've been told, that I've read about, and that I now see, because I feel like I've seen enough of these films to watch it and get it. This is the birth of modern martial arts films. What does that mean? This is the point at which you went from like that old, the black and white, the Wong Fei Hung, the slow movements, the heavy basis on, or emphasis rather, and being based in the traditions of like Peking opera and other types of theater, and like the old school versus modern martial arts filmmaking of violence, of quick fighting, of visceral hitting, of things breaking, people being thrown through things, limbs being chopped off, it's a really interesting film because it's a transition film. You can really see how King Hu is taking from older traditions and taking from Peking opera and the older films and the Wong Fei Hung type films. Like, I've never seen a whole Wong Fei Hung film, but I've seen a lot of clips from them. And you can really see how he's taking from that. And like the makeup looks very much like theater makeup, and like it's almost like those American films where you can see how they're taking from vaudeville, but they're also discovering new language through cinema. And this is very much one of those films. It comes from somewhere. It didn't just fall from the sky. And you can very much see that. And there are elements of that where I think, like, if you're a huge fan of, like, the Chang-Chi films or the Venom Mob films or, like, Jimmy Wang Yu, Bruce Lee, and you like that hard-hitting, visceral, aggressive, modern, violent, brutal style, you might not be blown away by this film, or you might not love it as per your subjective taste, if you will, because it is a little bit slower than those other films in terms of the martial arts choreography, even though it's like miles advanced from a lot of the older stuff you'll see that predated this film. But it's kind of operatic, and there's songs in it. And it's not operatic in like the sense that we think of operatic in the West, of like the operatic emotions and like that. What I mean to say is it reminds me of kind of Peking opera. It's very theatrical is the word I'm looking for. People are wearing very obvious makeup, and they conform to very obvious archetypes. And you could really see how a kind of folk tradition of theater that is related to this tradition of these Chinese novels and of this epic historical storytelling that, you see films like there's so many movies. Ashes of Time is one example that I just think of off the top of my head because I'm a big Wong Kar-wai fan, but there's so many films in the tradition of Hong Kong cinema and Taiwanese cinema too, that are influenced by these traditional martial arts novels from China, which is this form of storytelling that connects to, mythology and folklore and stuff like that. And you could see how kind of a folk tradition of theater, in the same way that we have vaudeville folk tradition of theater in the United States, in Chinese culture, really influenced this film. Like, one character wears all white and he's got obvious makeup, and I've learned that white is a symbol of death in Chinese culture. And so you could see how someone who's going to see a play, who's maybe like someone in a remote small village who's not super educated, they see the guy all in white with the eccentric makeup, he's the bad guy, he's the villain, he's the one who brings death. It's almost archetypes in these characters, and it's really well done. But you also have the tradition of a female character disguising herself as a male to get by in a male world. And in that respect, this film was hugely influential on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and a bunch of other films. But it's this really fascinating, and the first time I saw this film, I did not notice how much of a transition film it is. You really see those older traditions, but then you also see how oh wow, holy crap, he's really innovating. King Hu, as the filmmaker, he's pushing things forward so far. And what's really interesting about this film to me is that this film came out in 1966. In 1967, you have The One-Armed Swordsman, which stars Jimmy Wang Yu. I'm pointing because I have Chinese Boxer right here, which stars Jimmy Wang Yu and was directed by Chang-Chi, who's, the big Shaw Brothers filmmaker. And Chang-Chi is well known for making very male, masculine films about really brutal, bloody violence that are not very graceful, that are not very artistic, but that are more impactful, heavy-hitting, just brutal and remorseless. And that led to... So this film comes out, modernizes the martial arts film. A year later, Chang-Chi makes One-Armed Swordsman, and that starts this huge shift away from having a lot of films about women and with actresses, and shifting the emphasis to making films about men and brutality, and away from gracefulness and towards kind of savagery in a way. And it all happened within a year, because One-Armed Boxer, if I remember correctly, or One-Armed Swordsman, excuse me, who came out in 1967, was the first film to make $1 million at the Hong Kong box office. $1 million Hong Kong dollars, I think. But it was a huge hit. And so it shifted what people were doing. And there's actually really cool quotes in the booklet in here from Run Run Shaw talking about how in 1964, I believe, they had twice as many actresses working at Shaw Brothers as they did actors. And then the Chang-Chi film comes out, and the focus of film shifts towards this male-dominated world of brutality and savagery, and you move away from the graceful wuxia swordplay type films and into the more brutal kind of male-oriented films. And then in 1970, you get Jimmy Wang Yu, Bruce Lee, and then the kind of the basher genre, and things just get increasingly more brutal and male-oriented, and it's really interesting to see that shift. This is also the only film that King Hu made with, or the final film, I should say, that King Hu made with Shaw Brothers, because he just really butted heads. Chang-Chi is quoted in the booklet here as saying that King Hu is really kind of an artist and has a very artistic outlook on things, and is very kind of graceful and poetic, and he just couldn't work within that studio system of Shaw Brothers. And so he went to Taiwan, and so Dragon Inn and Come Drink With Me and Rain in the Mountain, all those films were made in Taiwan. And I actually have the Criterion release of A Touch of Zen, and I've gotten a request to review that. So that will hopefully be coming on the channel. But so this, to give you an idea of the kind of like what this film is, because I know I'm kind of more talking about its historical context, you have the son of the governor, I believe, gets kidnapped by this group of villains who are like hiding out in this temple, right? It's almost like a Western. Like, and you know that, like, if you follow the history of Asian cinema, American Westerns were hugely influential on a lot of points of evolution in East Asian cinema. Like Kurosawa was hugely influenced by John Ford, right? So films like Seven Samurai and stuff like that are really influenced by Westerns. And also by American film noir, too. Like, if you watch Kurosawa's contemporary set films like Stray Dog and Drunken Angel, like, very obvious American film noir influence there. And so I wouldn't be surprised if King Hu was in some way influenced by American Westerns, because you have these bandits who have this hideout, right? It's this temple, and they're hiding out there, and they kidnap the son of the governor, and then the governor sends his kind of like ultimate super badass assassin ass whooper, Golden Swallow, to go and negotiate with the criminals. And one of the things that the structure of this film is really interesting, because the person who ends up kind of being the protagonist doesn't reveal themselves until almost like halfway through the film. It's really interesting. It's like a puzzle box where you have this one group of characters, and then this other character shows up, and you think that that character will be the protagonist, and then somebody else shows up, and you're like, wait, what's going on? And then it keeps twisting in on itself until you realize, like, okay, this is what this movie's about. It's a really interesting unfolding of the narrative and the way that we get to the heart of what the film is. And it's a really interesting journey to go on, because it keeps upturning your expectations of what's going to happen. But there's so many scenes in this film. A great example is the first kind of big brawl, I guess you would call it, of the film, takes place in a tavern, and the Cheng Pei Pei character comes into the tavern, and the bad guys come into the tavern, and there's like, they're looking at each other and they're checking each other out, and there's a very similar stuff happens in Dragon Inn, which is, you know, also King Hu. But how many times have we seen that film, or that scene rather, in old school martial arts films, where a character goes into a restaurant or a tavern or a hotel or an inn or something like that, and then the other, I mean, you even see it in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like 40 years later or 35 years later or whatever, right? But you see that in so many of these movies. You see it in the Jimmy Wang Yu films. You see it in King Boxer, and you see it or not King Boxer, excuse me, Chinese Boxer. There is a similar scene in King Boxer, though, right? Like in so many of these films, there's just like a brawl in a tavern or a restaurant or whatever, right? And I don't know, I don't know the history of every single one of these films. And I have seen clips from Wong Fei-hung films where they're having fights in like restaurant type settings. But it feels so foundational, this scene where you're watching, you're like, this is where everything comes from, even though obviously it has its influences as well. So it's just, if you're a fan of old school martial arts films, it just hits all those nostalgia points. It's a great film. It's a really fun movie. It's pretty bloody in some places, and kind of unexpectedly so, because it'll go through these kind of graceful movements or these bits of comedy, and then like people are getting their arms chopped off like a minute later, and there's blood flying everywhere. But I love this movie. So for my personal taste, yeah, it's a great film, and I say go get it and check it out. But that's just kind of an overview of what the film is, and whether or not I feel you'll like it, because obviously that weighs in on whether or not you're going to pick it up. So to review the release, it comes with a slipcase, as you can see here, and there is reversible cover art. I have not reversed the cover art, but I'll show you what it is. And the reason I have not reversed the cover art is, let me show you. I already have that cover art on the 88 Films release. So you can see there, but you get it on both. So if you don't like the 88 slipcase, or the Arrow slipcase, excuse me, and you like that 88 artwork, you do get it right here, and you can flip it over and reverse it. And then this is just like a postcard that it comes with here. And what I'm realizing now is that I was actually just reading the essay from this film, and I think I left it in the house because it's not in here. So I'm going to do an over-the-shoulder and add a little shot of the booklet in later, hopefully. But suffice it to say, the booklet, it has two pieces of writing in it that are both very, very good. Ann Bilson does a kind of, she talks about the role of women in these films and the history of women in these films. And King Hu is interested in working with female protagonists because he does that in a lot of his films. And kind of the evolution of the films from being mostly for and about women to kind of, the arrival of Chang-Chi and incorporating more kind of male characters and the way that the violence shifted, the way that the plot shifted and stuff like that. It's a really interesting study of kind of the evolution of the films. And then the other piece of writing in here is actually really, really interesting. So it's by George Chun Han Wang. I didn't want to get that wrong. It's very academic, which is interesting. It has like an abstract and it's broken into sections. And it does a really fantastic job of basically, it gives you King Hu's basically whole bio. Like starting from when he was a kid, how he ended up in Hong Kong, and then how after that, how he ended up in Taiwan, contextualizing it within the history of China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, which is really interesting. And then going into all the stuff that King Hu was working on. King Hu started as an actor, I think, in the 50s, and then how King Hu got into filmmaking and the films that came after this, and working with the Shaw brothers and how that didn't work out, and how this film came to be. It's like a really thorough forensic examination, basically, of the career and life of King Hu, which is really fantastic, and you'll learn a lot about that. And I've actually been really wanting to read about that, because I can show you this. I have this from Spectrum Films. This is a King Hu double feature that features this huge book on King Hu, but it's in French, which I don't speak. And so since I got this last year, and there's incredible photographs in here and stuff, and I really wanted to read it, and I really wanted to know more about King Hu, but I don't speak French. And so now I have this booklet that has like a whole kind of incredible breakdown of King Hu's career and life and stuff like that. It's really awesome and really cool to have. So I'm really excited about that essay, or I'm really excited that piece was included in this release. So I'm not going to go like super deep into the details of every single bonus feature that's on here, but I do want to tell you the stuff that's on here and give you like a brief little overview of it so you know what to expect. So there's the commentary. It's a brand new commentary from film critic and historian Tony Raines. I absolutely loved what Tony Raines did on the Arrow Shawscope box set disc for King Boxer, which is one of my personal favorite martial arts films and Shaw Brothers films. He did like a 45 or 50 minute long appreciation of the film. Blew me away. This is incredible too. This is a really incredible commentary where he walks through the whole film and kind of talks about the plot, talks about the characters, does like an analysis of the film, while also providing enormous amounts of historical context for where this film fits and why it was so important, and kind of looking at traditions that it comes from and what it influenced and stuff like that. Then you have an interview with Cheng Pei Pei. This was conducted in 2003 by Frederic Ambroisine. This is 50 minutes long, if I'm not mistaken, so it's almost an hour long. And she covers her whole life and career. So you will learn everything you ever wanted to know about Cheng Pei Pei, who's an incredible performer and really fantastic in this film. She's in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon as like the evil witch character, as kind of, I think, kind of an homage to this film and her roles with, because she was in the sequel too, I believe, Golden Swallow. It's like a sort of sequel directed by Chang-Chi. It's not directed by King Hu, but it's really incredible. Like, she goes over everything, and she has a great memory, and she speaks English really well, and it's just really great to hear people talk about their careers, their lives, their experiences and stuff like that. I really love those types of bonus features. She also has an 11-minute long Q&A, I believe, at the University of Hawaii from 2016. That's really, really cool. And then we have interview with star Yu Hua, film by Frederic Ambroisine in 2007. And that one is, I believe, about 30 minutes long. Same kind of thing. Goes over his whole career, his whole life, where he's from, how he got into the films, his background in acting, martial arts, like all that stuff. Really fantastic interview. Very thorough and in-depth. And then you have an interview with star Chen Huanglei, filmed by Frederic Ambroisine in 2003, and that one is 50 minutes long. And that is, again, that was 45 minutes, excuse me. Really, really incredible. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, all these interviews cover their entire lives and careers, and they do deep dives, and there's a lot of great material in there, and I highly recommend checking out these interviews because there's just incredible stuff on this release. And then you have the Cinema Hong Kong Sword Fighting. So this is a documentary on the history of the wuxia genre from Shaw Brothers contributions to it, produced by Celestial Pictures in 2003, that features interviews with Cheng Pei Pei, Gordon Liu, Lau Kar-leung, John Woo, Sammo Hung, Carol Hui, David Chang, Jackie Chan, and others. If you saw my review of King Boxer, the disc from the Shawscope Volume 1 set, I talk about a documentary about martial arts films that incorporates Shaw Brothers' influence, but is really just kind of about the evolution of martial arts films in general. This is part 2 of that documentary. And so it's a continuation of that piece that's really phenomenal and incredible. And it's just like that could be its own release, to be totally honest with you. Like, you will learn so much about the history. It's like taking a course in the history of these films. It's a really incredible deep dive with interviews with all the people who were involved in the films. And it's included as a bonus feature on here. Highly recommended. So this is the Arrow release, Region A of Come Drink With Me. Like I said, this is a 5 out of 5 release for me, 10 out of 10, A+, whatever you want to call it. Incredible bonus features, interviews, documentaries, and a really important, essential film in the history of Hong Kong cinema. I think you should really pick up if you're seriously interested in learning about the history of these films. My name is Will. This is Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. I thank you so much for watching. Arrow has also put out 8 Diagram Pole Fighter. They will be putting out the One-Armed Boxer, the Jimmy Wang Yu film soon. Those will be Region A releases. I'm really excited about both of those. I'm definitely going to get One-Armed Boxer and review that for you. So look forward to that on the channel. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this release, what else you want to hear about, and we'll see you next time.
Tough trip.
We trailed him here. What's he want?
辛苦了，我们一路上跟下来，就是他一个人。